So would you mind please starting with a brief introduction? So that can just be your name, but feel free to add your age, profession, and where you're from.
Hi, my name's Nicki Tongs. I have 2 children and I work in accounting, and I've lived in Auckland my whole life.
And what do you know about Help Auckland, and how did you come to hear of us?
From what I know about Help Auckland is they're an organisation that's there to support survivors of sexual abuse and their families and providing them with various support and services. I was put into contact with the organisation a few years ago after making a statement to the police about some childhood abuse I'd been through, and I was put in touch with someone to help support me through the court process.
And would you mind please telling us a little bit about your sexual abuse experience or experiences? So just whatever you feel comfortable to say. But so how old were you at the time and what happened?
Yeah, sure. I was severely sexually abused between the ages of 8 and 11 by a male babysitter who was a family friend of ours from our church. My parents would go out to weekly Wednesday church meetings, and then he would come over and look after us, and that would be when the abuse happened. And so that went on for quite a few years. And then later on in life, I moved out of home when I was 17, and the husband of the wife who I was living with, he also raped me at that time too. I sort of had to move out of home because everything got a bit crazy. At the time of my childhood abuse, my mother was also sick and dying of cancer, so it was all on a backdrop of that, which was quite difficult. And so after she died, things at home were quite hard, and hence why I sort of moved out when I was 17 to try and, have a few more opportunities to get on with my schoolwork and stuff and to cope a bit better, but it kind of backfired a little bit.
That's so much to take. So I guess how did that leave you feeling?
It all left me pretty messed up. With the rape that happened when I was 17, I was already quite traumatized from the stuff that had happened to me as a child, so I mostly blocked that one out. Probably in my teenage years, when I was 16, my childhood abuser actually came back to the church I was at, and so basically that triggered off a whole lot of what I now know as sort of complex PTSD symptoms, and a whole lot of things were up and really messing up with me. And so for a number of years after that, I just was not coping. So life was really a struggle, and I sort of coped with it with normal teenage things, binge drinking and kind of trying to block out a lot of what had happened to me, and not really successfully doing that, as I was so much anxiety, nightmares, night terrors, depression and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And did you think it was okay to seek help?
Probably not. I felt probably a lot of the things that other people feel that have gone through that. I felt a lot of shame. I felt like a lot of my experiences could have been my fault, that others would think of them, why hadn't I done things? Why had I reacted this way? Or why did I not ask for help? Why did I do anything, So I guess I held back a lot and didn't feel it was okay too much to talk about it, because I was so worried about how I would be perceived and what I had or hadn't done in reaction to these things.
And so at the time that you did go to report to the police, so at what stage was that?
When I was 26, I'd gotten married, come back from an awesome overseas trip, and I decided I wanted to go back to church again. So my dad and my stepmom, now his new wife, attended a completely different church from when I was as a child, and the first day I went there, my childhood abuser was there, and so I completely freaked out. I was like, well, I'm not going to go to that church. But this church was a completely different one, and I'd already told my father a few years ago. My therapist had supported me to do that, and so my father also recognised my abuser there, and he, along with the pastors of the church, sort of approached me and wanted to offer me support to kind of talk to the police, to, you know, hold this person to account, to take some action, really. The pastors in the church were concerned because they now had this man in their church that they knew had abused somebody, and that he was wanting to get involved in their church ministries and working with children, and they didn't want what had happened to me for there to be any risk of that to happen to other people. So they were trying to support me to feel okay about going to the police and making a statement in order to try and stop him from having any contact with children.
Yeah, of course. And through that process, how did HELP's court support service help you?
They helped me massively. I was put in touch with a lady called Jennifer through HELP, and she just was, I can't talk highly enough of her. She was just so knowledgeable and had all this expertise and experience with the New Zealand justice system and the whole court process, which, you know, the family and support I had around me was good, but we just didn't have that specialised knowledge which she held, and she was able to really help prepare me in the way of also, you know, I needed to be able to talk and tell my story to the police, to in court in a way, but also to be an effective witness. I needed to be in control of my emotions, be able to speak clearly without getting triggered and traumatized by the trauma. So there was often things she would teach me, breathing techniques and other things to try and stay in the present, you know, bringing grounding techniques to bringing myself back and all of that kind of thing. So she would help prepare me in that way, as well as navigating the whole process, because our court system is a very long and hard process for survivors to go through. There's lots of delays, there's lots of hearings, and just the ability to have someone walk that journey with you who is knowledgeable about it was just amazing, because it made a huge difference in the build up to making me feel like I'm ready, I can go do this in the court system. And even at trial, she was there, and you know, there were things that happened during the trial. There was 2 days in, we had a mistrial, and that was really, it's like the rug's been pulled out from underneath you. This whole process was really incredibly hard, and I was pretty much having a panic attack, but you know, in comes Jennifer, and she kind of, you know, cleared the room, got everyone out, assured me I didn't need to do anything I didn't want to do, found out what I wanted to do. She then went and advocated with the police, the prosecutor, the lawyers, the judge, and then we managed to resolve the situation, so then I could get back in and give my evidence and it could all proceed. So that kind of support was really amazing and made a huge difference in a really difficult process.
Yeah. And what are some other services that you utilise to support you following the abuse? So I know you've engaged with Project Restore, and you've received some therapy support, you mentioned.
Yeah.
And how did they combine to help you achieve some form of like justice and healing?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, after going through the justice system, like I was really lucky. My offender, he got found guilty on all the charges, which was great. But my whole point for doing the court process was to help heal myself, but also just protect others from him. And so I had these goals and things of thought of how I would feel after going through that system. But it's just such a brutal system that I sort of felt really, in the sentencing, you know, there was all these different things where you just feel shortchanged, and it's just a really difficult process. It's a, you know, cross-examination and everything. It takes a lot out of you. So even though I was one of the lucky ones to get a guilty verdict, I came out of the experience just feeling burnt, basically, and just feeling really like I hadn't got the closure. I hadn't got what I really wanted out of that process. So Jennifer was still supporting me after the trial, because there's things like parole that comes up. So a few years later, parole had come up for my offender, and so I was making submissions to the parole board, and so Jennifer was there supporting me. again. And it was during that process that my offender started to say he was making admissions as to the abuse from my childhood. And so Jennifer at this stage was now working sort of 50-50, working in help, doing the court support role, and she was also now working in an organisation called Project Restore with restorative justice for sexual violence. So she saw an opportunity here, and having known how I just didn't really get what I was looking for out of the court system, and she said to me, there's this other avenue, would you be open to knowing a bit more about it and exploring that and seeing whether this could help meet some of your needs, help you heal more. And so I started on the journey with that, and it was a really amazing experience. The restorative justice, it's a really alternative version of justice, whereas the court system is very adversarial. Project Restore and restorative justice for sexual violence is not offender focused, it's the victim, the survivor focused. So it's about what I need from the experience. What do I want? It gives me an opportunity to have a conversation with someone that's caused me great harm, and to express that harm, and to have that acknowledged, and to have a discussion. And it's all about having my needs met to help me heal. So for me, that was, I got so much healing out of that process over the court process. I got to really have a safe, facilitated conversation with my offender, and I came out of that with his acknowledgement, and not just acknowledgement of all the abuse being true as to what I'd said had happened, but also I felt like he finally understood some of the damage that his offending had had on my life and the severe impacts of that. And so that was really helpful for me. Yeah, that was massive. Yeah.
And how did you received some therapy as well?
Yes.
How did that help you as well with?
Yes, so I had a wonderful psychologist that I worked with for a number of years, but after she retired, I then found another therapist who's linked in to help. And so with her, she's more focused on helping me heal from the rape that happened when I was 17, because a few years ago that sort of came up again for me, and I sort of had a massive breakdown, and I was really unwell and very suicidal again, and my mental health was terrible because I just hadn't dealt with that event at all, because I hadn't been able to. I didn't want to go through a court process for that. I didn't want to put myself through that. I did make a statement to the police, but I just wanted to leave it there. I wasn't prepared to go any further with that one. I just wasn't in a place where I thought I could cope with that, and I knew he was already denying it, and so there wasn't going to be the same avenue as my childhood offender to deal with this. So what I found helpful with this therapist is she also runs some groups which are called Freedom to Fly, and they're psychodrama for survivors of sexual abuse, and I found them extremely helpful for just giving me a creative way, and also connection with other survivors. But you can, in this group, you get to support, and using psychodrama is a very powerful tool that can be very healing and helping you process traumas and move through them. And that for me has been very helpful.
Yeah, we run quite a few of those Freedom to Fly workshops out of this space as well.
It's great, because I think what it does is putting together a bunch of survivors together, connection, it ends your isolation and how alone you often feel, and to actually meet other people on their journeys. You get the opportunity to build some friendships, and also they're part of helping them heal, and we're all working together. So they're very powerful, those workshops.
Yeah. We recommend, a lot of our clients to go to those groups, and also the dialectical behaviour therapy groups as well that are held out of here. Because the connection is important.
Absolutely.
So looking at other ways that people can seek support and improve their mental health after trauma, how have your family, friends and community helped you during that process?
I think for me, having family and friends has been quite important. I've got sort of 3 key people outside of my therapist who I'm able to call upon and talk to, and who know my journey, and having that support from them has been really helpful, again, just to end myself feeling not so alone in it all, and just to help me when I'm having a not so great day, and to just know that I can just reach out and I've got that support, and it's a very accepting and loving way.
It's crucial. And are there any activities like exercise, meditation, anything else that supported your healing?
I found exercise really helpful. I've sort of only really engaged in that so much over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. I've had people tell me over the time, oh, get out for a walk, it's all good for you, it helps with your mental health, but I'd go for the odd walk, but I hadn't really committed to anything. So after being so unwell about 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. So I started with the walks, and then it sort of progressed into running and cycling. So now I have sort of 5 days a week where I do running and cycling. I do it first thing in the morning, and it's been amazing for my mental health. It just really helps me get going for the day. It helps me sort of shake out everything and clear my mind. Especially as I have a lot of trouble sleeping with my complex PTSD. I have nightmares and night terrors, so often I'm quite tired and I've got a lot in my head from the night before, so just being able to exercise and get that out has been a really good, really helpful thing for me.
And so do you feel like you're in a better place now than you were immediately after the abuse?
Absolutely. I'm pleased with, how things have gone. For me, it was a massive healing journey, having to go through the court process and then restorative justice with my childhood offender. And I feel like that part of what happened to me, I processed and dealt with and moved through quite successfully. So with all the support that I've had around me, it's made a huge difference. With the later abuse, with the rape at 17, I kind of didn't deal with that for a number of years, but I've been sort of, chipping away at it over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and I feel like I'm in a much better place now. My mental health is a lot better. I'm able to focus and find different ways of working through. I think with any kind of trauma, it's not something that can be easily fixed. It's not something that just disappears. It's almost like a journey, and we'll keep working at things, and you'll get triggered by things at different times in life, and just then working through those, I think, then with a therapist or someone is a way, and it's a long-term sort of healing journey. It's not a final destination you get to, but overall I'm in a completely different place because of all the support and help I've had from this organisation, and then just other family and friends around me, just to help me heal and move on.
And why do you think, I feel like you've kind of touched on it in your previous answer, but why do you think that free specialised support services for survivors of sexual abuse is so important?
I think it's just so incredibly important. I think everybody who's been through any kind of sexual abuse trauma needs to be able to have access to organisations and support. And you can't often get that from your family and friends. You often need an organisation like HELP that actually has specialists' knowledge and has people that are equipped to be able to help survivors on whatever area they need help with, So I really think it's such an important thing to have these organisations to be freely accessed by anybody and everybody that needs them.
And what are some of the changes you have already seen in the space over the last decade, and what further changes would you like to see? So that could be in terms of sexual abuse legislation, support services, or society's response to sexual abuse.
In regards to the court process, I have seen some changes with that over the last 10 years or so. A number of years ago, I was involved in just making submissions to help improve processes. I know some of those have happened. There was a trial that happened in Auckland which tried to change the system of courts and have more specialised courts for sexual violence. I'm not sure if that's completely ongoing, but I do know now when judges involved in any trials, they actually have to, when they're summing up, they have to talk about things, try to debunk some of the myths about sexual violence and the way someone might react, and that's try and remove people's bias in the juries. So I think that's a helpful change. I also think, with movements that have come through over the last few years, the Me Too movement and all those sorts of things have also been really positive, because it's got people talking about sexual abuse and violence. It's not such a taboo subject. So it has people engaging and willing to acknowledge that these things happen and these things actually cause significant harm to many people. I think that's probably been the biggest changes I've seen. I still think there's a long way to go.
So over the last 10 or so years, since you received your support from HELP, how have you continued to advocate for survivors of sexual abuse?
For me, I've always found it quite important that if I can share a little bit of my story and that actually helps others, it kind of takes away from a whole lot of the bad that happened to me. So I've always been quite open to trying to get on board with doing things. In the early days, it was trying to make submissions to the Law Society about making changes for the court system to try and make that a little bit more easier for victims and survivors to journey through that style of court. And I've also been involved in, if help has asked me at different points to share a little bit of my story, I've been open to doing that. Later on, I've gotten on board quite happily with promoting some of the things to do with Project Restore and restorative justice. And that way I've been approached, actually it's come from Australia, so SBS Insight were doing, quite a number of years ago now, they wanted to talk about restorative justice in the sexual violence world, and in Australia they didn't really have that, and they were aware there was this project Restore operating and offering that to survivors in New Zealand. So they wanted to interview someone that had been through that process. So Jennifer asked if I'd be willing to do that, so I went over and we spoke on, was part of a talk show for that. And then just last year, another lady called Jess Hill for SBS, she's done a documentary called Asking for That in Australia, and that's around sexual violence again, and they wanted to talk about restorative justice and asked me to share a bit of my story going through the courts and how I found restorative justice in New Zealand as a different alternative way of healing some of the trauma.
That's awesome. And do you have any advice for anyone who has been sexually abused and needs help?
I think my biggest advice would just be to reach out. You're not alone. This happens to a lot of people, and sadly so, but to find some support for yourself. Life can be better. You can heal. There is help out there to make things easier for you, and just trying to find access to that, and I guess just knowing that there's others out there that would be there and able to support you through your journey.
And is there anything further you'd like to add about your experience with Help Auckland, or just about your personal story?
I've just been so grateful for being put in contact with Help all the way back, and the support I've had from Jennifer, who worked through Help, was just amazing, and in every way through, like, it's so invaluable, and it made a huge difference to my journey, just having that professional support, but someone that was very genuine and very caring and knowledgeable, made a great help for all the difficult things of going through a trial and everything else. So it made a huge difference. So I'm just really grateful for that, and for the organisation and the support it continues to give survivors.
And we're really grateful for you for being here, and also that you're a part of like our 30-year anniversary.
Yes.
And now it's been 42 years of Help, so
yeah,
thank you for being.
No, it's such an important organisation, and I'm just so pleased to just see it still, continuing to grow and offer services and to people that need it. So yeah.